Oh, got my music. We are live. We are ready. Tonight is going to be a great night. Y'all come on in. Come on in. I have my sister here, LaShasta Bell, who is ready to drop some diamonds on you guys tonight about influence. So come on in, share, tell a friend that we're on live, and we're going to get ready to dive into under the influence. What influences are you under? How are influences impacting your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual well being? What is it doing for your life right now? Because we need to understand that influence is so powerful and it impacts everything that we do in our daily lives. Okay, so come on in, y'all start sharing, and let's get into this. I'm gonna give 3 more minutes, and we're gonna go ahead and get into this, Shasta.
Okay. Yes, I am sharing everywhere. Everywhere, everywhere,
Yes.
everywhere.
Okay. Here we go. Let's see. Let's get this going. Can you still see me?
I can.
Awesome.
I can hear your music too.
We are ready. Y'all come on in. While we're waiting, I know a lot of people are probably going to watch this on the replay. I know a lot of people may watch this on the replay, so I just want to send my thank yous out to everyone who tunes in to my podcast, Your Life Relations Ambassador. This really has been really stretched out of my comfort zone, but I know that everybody's story and everybody's life has power in their stories and what they've been through. And so I just want to tell everyone thank you. So many people I've gotten to meet in my life experiences all over the world. So I know I'm going to see you guys on the replay. So I love you guys and thank you so much. Again, I want to just thank LaShasta Bell for taking the time for just doing this show with me tonight. We planned this like over a month ago because we both have really busy schedules.
Yes,
And it's like,
indeed.
if we don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen, right? So
That's it.
it's 8 o'clock. So that's a whole other topic. Schedule it all in, right? Making your life happen on a schedule. So I want to go ahead and let you start. Go ahead and just tell me about just tell the people who you are.
I mean, you kind of summed it up all right now. I'm LaShasta Bell, so I am first and foremost a Black woman navigating this life, doing the best that I can to keep my spiritual, mental, physical self in the best shape so that I can do what I was called to do. As some will call it, a ministry, a passion, a job, a niche, whatever you want to call it. But that which I do is all things mental health. I like to consider myself a mental health advocate. I feel like I've been one well before I stepped foot on Prairie View's campus, just being an advocate for my people first, and then I had to learn how to be an advocate for myself first, and then
Yes.
so I'm not gonna act like I came into the world doing it like I do it now. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, certified, clinically certified anxiety treatment professional, mindfully informed clinical certified therapist, level one. All of these letters behind my name just means that I love what I do. I work with individuals, families, couples suffering from anxiety and
Mm,
use mindfulness as one of the main techniques to help them combat and
yeah.
decrease that anxiety. I'm also um, the host and creator of Am I Crazy, the mental health talk show. that streams on Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon TV, and on my YouTube channel, LaShasta Bell. So those are a few things that I do. All things mental health. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a friend. I'm a line sister. All those things. But we go back to the top. I'm just a Black woman trying to navigate this life, right?
And that's powerful right there, what you just said. So many women, so many Black women, we don't, we under, it's almost like our value has been underestimated in society. And so to just put that at the forefront, you know what, I'm a Black woman out here.
Yeah.
I'm making waves, I'm navigating new territory. And, we just out here trusting God that he's going to just take us in the path that he's called us into. So I love that. Thank you again for coming on. I really want to talk about under the influence. So let's talk about what are some of the spheres of influence that people have in their lives that we talk about navigating.
Every part. I mean, every part of our being is influenced in some capacity by an entity, a person, or organization, from our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. The decisions that we make day in and day out are influenced by someone. When I think of a story, and I tell it frequently when I speak, and it fits in different capacities. It's amazing how it can fit. And I remember growing up that my mom would say, don't wear blue eyeshadow, because blue eyeshadow was for women of the night,
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so that was an influence. So for years, I wouldn't wear blue eyeshadow. And that was the rationale. And of course, you're not going to just openly tell people that's why I don't wear it.
Yeah.
But that was an influence. And then one day I'm like, I don't think that's true. Because this
Right.
lady got some, this lady, so we are influenced all the time, but the biggest influence happens in our childhood and in our family systems. And we don't realize the influence because that's just who we are. This is how we live. But it's a whole influence. And it took me in my 20s, I was probably close to 30, to start looking around and doing some observing to be willing to even to challenge that influence and that information.
Yeah.
So the influences are at how we tie our shoes, how we walk, how we talk. Come on now, you can tell those of us who are in the Houston area, sometimes you can tell what side of town somebody is from.
Yes, you can.
Right. Come on now.
Yeah, you can. And I love that because when you talked about that different types of influence, my great grandmother the same way, don't you wear no red lipstick? So it was just those little things, the little nuances that you just go through, and it's like it becomes subliminal. And so when you talk about those influence, some of those are most of the time in childhood, I feel like it's uncontrolled, right? You can't control your environment. And then, like you said, you move into your 20s and 30s, and then now you can begin to come into the knowledge and understanding, and you say, now I have some control. Now I can decide, what's good and what's bad, use my discernment to say, okay, this is how I need to influence. But before we go a little further, so you talked about people. And I think the one thing you said was those major influences, the first influence in your life are those parents. And we have to talk about everything that our parents did probably wasn't right, but they did the best they could with what they knew how, right? So
what they had.
you don't hold people captive, your parents captive for the influence they had in your life. That's all they knew. You know what I mean? And so you move from what the only thing that you knew, the only thing that you grew up seeing, into a place of, now I'm understanding. And so one of the things I love to talk about is perspective, because understanding is simply your perspective, right? And so you talk about those places. And so a lot of people grew up in church. So guess what? Church becomes a place of influence, And so for what it is, religion,
the good, the bad,
I'll take it, run it out. Religion becomes influence, right? And so I won't dive into that tonight, but
look, wherever you want to dive. Now, I'm not going to dive in the pool because I don't do no diving. But we can dive into all the topics.
We can get so it's just a matter of fact. And then when you want to bring it back, because in the Black community, that's a major factor: church, family, and then you're in a community surrounded by people. And so some people in their lives have found themselves shifting. I can say, well, I just talk about myself because I found myself, we started out, I'll say at a Baptist church in a Black community. And as our parents, were more educated, well, we moved to the suburbs, right? And so now you move into this whole different sphere of influence. And in my life, I found that, it became very, cultural, I should say, and then really predominantly white at one time, to the point, and I'm probably might skipping ahead, but when I went to Prairie View, and it's really crazy because I had been surrounded by so many people that were not of color for so long, from fifth grade all the way to 12th grade. Like, I felt overwhelmed being around people that looked like me. And I thought it was weird, and I never talked about it, but talking to somebody like you was like, that's normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't realize
It's a
it.
culture
Yeah.
shock.
Yeah, it's culture shock. And so you got to understand that your influence, it impacts how you see the world. And that's where I want to talk about, how do we recognize how our influence are impacting our lives? How do we recognize that as we move into teenage years and adulthood?
I think first you have to identify your influences. Like you have
Okay.
to start there and to understand that what we watch, what we eat,
Yeah.
what we drink, you know, the conversations we have with other people, all of those things are influences. And a lot of times people don't want to believe it, but here's the thing. If you are intentional about getting to know you and being aware,
Yeah.
when you get to that place, you can literally have a phone conversation with somebody and be like, "Oh, they tapped my energy."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
You can feel
we've
it.
had some of those conversations like, "Oh Lord," or you will see the name on the caller ID on your phone, and
Yeah.
you'll be like, "No, I don't have the energy for that." So if you don't have the energy for that person in that conversation, then understanding that's an influence. Like
That's good.
it's a negative influence on your mood, on your energy. And sometimes we'll say that in passing and use it really lightly, and not understanding that that's an influence, and being willing to dig a little deeper to see what is it about that person, what is it about that space that
Yeah.
influence and impacts your mood to the point that you want to avoid it, or not talk to them. Oh, I can only talk to that person before 12 o'clock, or I can't talk to
Yeah.
them before I have my morning coffee. You know, you
Right.
you hear all of these kind of comments, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Can we take a moment and establish what about that person, about that thing is influencing you to the point that you'll avoid? Like, you got a whole regiment of
Come
when you
on.
talk
Yeah.
to somebody.
And I'm glad you got into that, because that was my next thing, is like, as a woman, a Black woman, and someone who's always helping people, I'm very, very much an empath. And so I'm always helping others. And then I got to a point in my life where, as I started my relationship and God was growing, I started like being able to just feel things. I'm like, when I get around this person, it makes me feel this kind. And I didn't realize, I'm thinking it's me. I'm like, man, what's wrong with me? And so I had to realize, it wasn't me. It was all of these atmospheres and this influence that I was coming up under that was making me feel that way. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. And that's why I really want to talk about this, because we don't understand how people can be positive, and so, pour into you, and just so impactful in your life, and really just have a beautiful influence and positive impact. And at the same time, some people are just like to your detriment, like they drain you. Like, I've literally had phone conversations, and I'm like, I get off with a headache. I'm like, wait a minute, we weren't even talking about nothing bad, but I have a headache. Like, what is that? I'm like, something wrong with me. Let me take some Tylenol. No, like, you literally have to be aware of how, even going into places like, I know a lot of times when I travel, like, I walked into a building, I'm like, ooh, I'm like, I feel, you feel, you can feel like, and I don't know, a lot of you guys on here, if you don't understand that, some people might be saying, look, man, I've had that too. Look, it's not you. It's these people, it's placing things, and you have to start recognizing when you're under the influence of a person or a place or something that's happening around you. And then when you're aware of that, you have to take action. So LaShasta, how do we take positive action to reinforce that positive influence and kind of just, we don't, because I feel like in maturity, I don't have to move to a place where I have to cut people off. You know what I mean? But how do we set those boundaries is what I've
That's it.
learned. How
That,
do we
that
create, how do we how do we keep our influence under control, our peace, to preserve our peace of mind? That's what I want to ask you.
Okay, and I want to back up a little bit when you were saying about
Okay.
being in buildings and spaces. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I study is interpersonal neurobiology, which is a way of
Okay.
being with people and talks about energy and
Mm.
how our nervous system integrates with one another. So, believe it or not, two nervous systems is smaller than one. So we integrate so very tightly with other people in their nervous system that it's smaller than our one individual. So
Wow.
that's part of the reason why you can be with someone, talk to them, even if you're not face to face, and your energy or your mood shifts because you're integrating with one another. Like
Mm.
the neuroscience behind it's like a I'll go. So let me just try to keep it real simple. Like when we say positive vibes,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole real thing. That's a science based thing.
Yeah.
And they don't call it vibes. They call it something else. I can't think of the word now. But it transfer from person
Yeah.
to person,
Yeah.
space to space. So like I was at the eye doctor today, and it was a place I hadn't been. And when I walked in, I'm like, I don't know that I want to be here. Like it did not feel right. And as I interact with the people that work there, I realize I'm like, their energy is not great. So let me
Yeah.
go ahead and do what I need to do because I already got this appointment. But I'm like, can you just email me my prescription? I
Yeah.
was going to say and wait for it because I started feeling anxious,
Oh,
and
wow.
I wasn't anxious. So that means that it had to be the energy in the room. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let me look around. This person, this, and I'm like, no, 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 no. It's nothing here for you to fix. It's time for you to go. So when you say, in our maturity, that we don't have to cut people off or cut things off, sometimes in your maturity, you should know to cut some things off, like to be intentional. And so
Okay.
sometimes, yes, that is the answer, like cutting off the conversation or
Okay.
redirecting it. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to completely cut the person out your life, but you can set those boundaries, which teach people how to treat you, of what
Mm-hmm.
conversations
Yeah.
you're good with and what conversations you aren't. I was literally talking to a client last night, and we were talking about friendships and dynamics and conversations that you enter and don't enter. And she was like, I want to be friends with the people I work with, but they gossip. And I said, well, you can teach them how to treat you, where
Mm-hmm.
they'll
Yeah.
understand that you're not there for the gossip. So they can gossip
Yeah.
with Susie over here, but they can't gossip with you.
Yeah.
And I was explaining, like, I have friends that in the past that I noticed their behavior would change when they were with a particular friend versus with,
Yes. Oh my
and it
gosh. Yeah.
doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that they're not being genuine. It just means that they're under the influence
Influence. Oh wow. Okay.
of the person that they're with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we influence one another differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that having that awareness of, okay, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And then being intentional about seeking spaces where the work is good.
Yes. I
That
love that.
it's that intentional space. So it could be like if we talk about social media, it could be, muting some folks that energy just not good on the page.
Follow. Yeah.
like like Facebook, that's one of the best features you could have came up
Oh,
with. I
that
can
I,
take a break from them for 30 days.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's doing that, like detoxing yourself
Yes.
from certain people until you can decide which boundaries you want to put in place. And then when you
Yes.
re-enter,
Mm-hmm.
you can put in that boundary. I can remember years ago in college, before I even knew what a boundary was, I knew that I did not like when I was interacting with friends for them to call me the B word.
Right. Yeah.
which
Mhm.
was a term of endearment that people use and
People
some
use
women
it, yeah.
still use. I don't have that's not my dog in that fight. It
Yeah.
was just for me. And I'm like, yeah. And I had one particular friend that would use it often. And I'm like, could you just please call me something else? Just don't. She's like,
Right.
it's a term of endearment. You know, I love you. I say, I do. But when you say that, it does not feel like love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
That was
good.
an influence, and maybe
Mhm.
that came from a childhood space, maybe that came from somewhere else. It likely came from fourth or fifth grade when I was bullied like crazy, and that word was what I was referred to often, or when I was three
Yeah.
years old and I was a half white bee in the neighborhood because
Oh my
I was
God.
light
Yeah.
skinned with curly hair. It's probably all those things, right? All those
Yeah.
influences. So here it is, this friendship. I love and adore this person, and but that word was not
Mm.
a good influence.
Yeah. It was a trigger. It
It was
was,
a trigger.
and that leads me to when you're talking about the influence, and I like when you said sometimes you have to detox, and I don't think people understand the power of taking a moment to just step back out of everything. And for me, it's always that moment I take back, just to reestablish my peace, my well-being, and just my relationship with God. I'm like, okay, God, I'm out here, I'm participating, in this world, and I know I'm in here, and you have a purpose for me. And so I need a moment so you can show me how to relate to people, because right now what I keep hitting the wall of, this feeling, all of this influence is coming from everywhere. And like you said, now it's becoming a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people listening, listen, if you keep coming into a situation and every time somebody says something, it sets you off, that is a red flag to take a step back and refocus, and find clarity and detox. You know, a lot of people talk about toxic relationships. I don't think people talk about um, dysfunction enough. And it was so crazy. I find my life, everything around me speaks. And I was riding in the car with my son, and there was a skunk on the side of the road. So y'all, I live out here in Prairie View, so we out in the country. So there's skunks on the road, right? And we ride by, and I'm like, how is this vulture eating this skunk? I smell it from down the road. And my son said something so powerful. He said, the bird is so used to the smell of rotting flesh that if he's hungry, he's going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And that spoke to me that some of us are so used to being around people and under the influences that are not good for us, that we endure it because that's all we know. And
Yeah.
so for you, I want you to understand, how do you tell us, how do you help people get out of that space of this is all I know into a space of understanding on how to reframe their lives in positive influences?
You said a whole mouthful. And with that vulture situation, I'll
Oh
take
my
it one
God.
step further. They have to, the rot is what attracts them.
My gosh.
You
Mm.
know, a vulture is there to eat what's dead. So
Yes.
the stink is what attracts them to eat. If it doesn't stink, they don't go near it. And
Wow.
so what you said about taking a moment, stepping back, and for some of us that's, praying to God, for some of us that's meditating, for some of us that's going in silence and solitude, because just sitting in silence heals your brain. It heals your
Okay.
hippocampus. It helps to consolidate memories and learning and things like that. Just a few minutes a day. So I think it's important to evaluate your life. Like
Yeah.
literally, instead of putting other people's lives under a microscope,
Yes.
yourself under that microscope and say, okay, how am I doing in my work life? How am I
Mhm.
doing in my home life? How am I doing with my physical health? How am I doing with my spirituality? Like really being intentional and asking those questions. And when you get the answers, get them and don't judge yourself for them. Like a lot of times we'll judge ourselves for being in situations too long, being in relationships too long, being at a job too long, and it negates, or not negates, it deters us from moving forward because we've
Yes.
been there so long. And then we start beating up on ourselves, and the guilt and the shame comes in. And the Bible says there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So
That's
it's like,
it.
what's the reason we condemning ourselves for something that he already knew he was going to do and he's
Yeah.
already paid for? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you get those answers, just sitting with them and saying, okay, I'm in this circle of friends that half the circle is good and the other half's not. How do I
Mm-hmm.
spend more time with the half that's good? How do I set
Yeah.
boundaries with the half that's not so great?
Yeah.
Do I need to learn how to have a healthy cutoff? Which I have a guest that's on the show that talk about that, and she said that. I say a healthy cutoff. Now,
Healthy.
yes, look,
Okay.
it's a whole way to to release people from the relationship that you have with them without just doing, my block game is strong. What about that
Yeah.
communication game? What about being able to
Great.
communicate what you need? Because that friend in college, if I would have blocked her or just stopped dealing with her without a conversation, then that's a friendship that's valuable that I would have lost out on because I wouldn't communicate. So once you identify what's triggering you, once you take the time to do some introspection, then it's about intentionally communicating
Mm-hmm.
your needs from that person, from that environment, what's in your control, what's not in your control. Like I can control which church I attend.
Great.
I can control what comes out the pastor's mouth, but I can control how I choose to absorb it and what I
Mm-hmm.
do with it. Monique,
Yes.
the comedian, said a long time ago, take what you need and leave the rest.
Yes.
I
I
think enough
believe
of
that.
us don't recognize what we need, so we take it all,
All
even the
in.
stuff that's
Yeah.
not for us.
Yes. And so I love that because we're talking about friendship, but here's something that you can't undo is family. And so a lot of people struggle with the influence from whether it's a mother, a father, or a sibling. How do we reconcile first with ourselves, and then how do we take that? Because I love what you said. Take a step back and then examine yourself.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people always try to point the finger and be like, well, they no 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 no, because whatever, like you said, whatever that is happening, it's something inside of you that's causing you to have these feelings or causing you to be triggered by it. So you said take this step back. Now, what does that look like when you're talking about a mother or father? Maybe it was a strained relationship. How do we go about that process? What does that
So
look like?
there may be some people that don't like this answer, but this is what I'm going to say. The
Yeah.
process doesn't change based
Okay.
on the label that you've given a person in your life
Okay.
because you have to do what works best for you. So I can't say, oh, stay connected to the mom that doesn't have anything good to say out her mouth, even when you set the boundaries. I'm not going to say that. Like,
Okay.
I'm not built for that. But what I'm
Right.
going to say is that the process is the same. You set the boundaries. You recognize the influence. You recognize what parts of the influence of that parental unit is positive and helps propel you and which parts don't. And you set
Yeah.
the boundary and then you work to be the greater influence in your own life.
Mm, yeah.
There are some things that to this day with my dad, and I'm like, really? Like,
Yeah.
we barely just started back talking in 2020 after 30, no, 25 years.
Yeah.
And when I hear some of the things, I'm like, maybe I was better not being in
Mm,
communication with this person because in those 25 years, I've learned and grown and learned a lot. And that could have been an influence that I would have had to unlearn, overcome.
mm,
But even just like some perspectives on life, I'm like, this is crazy. But it makes sense when you look at his childhood and things like that.
yes.
And so it's like that being able to say the person is doing the best they can with what they have. I get to choose if I'm offended or not.
Mm-hmm.
I get to choose the perspective. And then I can choose to create an influence that can help influence them. My mom says all the time, like, Shasta, you just don't know how much you've helped me when you speak. Like some of the things that you speak
Yeah.
about and talk about, I don't know that we would ever talk about it in a regular everyday conversation. So I'm
Right.
glad I can hop on Zoom and hear you because I apply it to my life and now my life is better. So
Yes.
let's not discount our influence
Okay.
that we can create on other people. So with family, it's the same. Sometimes you have to detox from family and take a moment and step back until you can decide how you want them to treat you. And or just make up your mind with some things like although I am not the lightest skinned person in my family, oftentimes outside of my nuclear family, I
Mm-hmm.
would be referenced as the white girl sometimes because I speak
Yep.
properly. Da 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 da. I had to decide within me how I was going to receive what they were saying, and if I
Yeah.
was going to allow that to cause me to change how I move with them or how I spoke when I was around them or whatever. And for some years, I would code switch, and even within
Mhm.
family. And
Yeah.
then after a while, I'm like, you know what? No, this is exhausting.
Yes, yes, and I went through that too. I never thought I was light skinned and all that, but it was so easy for people to make that difference. And even in my family, because like I guess out of all of my cousins, maybe I was a light skinned one with the long hair, and I still wear my hair. And sometimes they say like a white girl, and people say it and it's not intentional, but it becomes a part of how it influences
Mm-hmm.
at one point how I saw myself. Like, do I not fit in? What's so different about me?
And I'm not black enough.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
can I be blacker? So, you start fighting and doing, can I be ghetto? You know what I mean? So,
Look,
and
let me tell you, last year, the year before, I did Ancestry.com and I also did
mhm,
the African Ancestry. I was
mhm.
so excited to be like, look, boom, I got more black in me than the darker people in the family. And I said it as a
Yeah.
joke in a
Mhm.
joking way, but it was it felt good to be affirmed in that space because it was
Yes.
questioned. And that's the reason why I started to introduce myself as a black woman first, because
Mm.
I had to release the influence of what had been said to me for years and decide to embrace that nobody can tell me that I'm not. Like,
Yes.
it doesn't matter which big words I paid for that I use. It doesn't matter how I wear my hair. It doesn't matter what what color I am on the colorism scale. I am still black. And
Yes.
on a lot of days, I'm blackety black black.
Black, because I'm black, y'all. And I
Yeah.
think that's powerful because that's one thing I've tried to tell my daughters because my youngest daughter, very fair skinned. I took it out. Everybody was like, "Is a daddy Mexican?" I'm like, "No, they all got the same daddy." And to the point, where after they got old enough, my daughter was like, "So when is she going to turn brown?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh." And so I said that to say that we're influenced just by the things that we allow ourselves to see and hear. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I think about that, I think about the gates that, what I call the gates of your eyes, your
Mm-hmm.
ears, even your smell, what you're saying, and even your heart and your spirit. And so I really want to talk about spiritual well-being because a lot of times we can start acting a certain way or feeling angry. Our emotions can shift when we encounter different influences, and it could be demonic influence. It could be just influences from things that have been generationally passed down. And so I really want to talk about. Let's get to the root of maybe why you people, because I hate people tell me that's just the way I am. No, no, no. That's just not your personality. There's a root to what you're doing. And I
Yeah.
need you to help yourself get there and like spend some time getting to the root. So tell us how, you talk to people and help people do the work of getting to the root of the things they're dealing with, whether it's generational. And even for myself, I feel like every year my birthday came around, I started experiencing this same type of emotion. It was like, this year I finally figured it out. And it's crazy, I turned 42. I know I don't look like it, but
You
yeah,
don't. You don't. Sis. You don't. You don't.
but I just realized and I called my spiritual mama like every year around this time, what the heck? And she was like, see if you need to take some time and pray. And God revealed that thing. And then I was able to deal with it. And so let's just talk to us about how do we get to the root? What is the kind of work? What does that look like getting to the root of a situation that we keep encountering?
I mean, it looks different for everyone. Sometimes we don't always get to the what, or the we have to focus on the how to move from this place. So
Okay.
sometimes, yes, like you said, you took some time, you sat with it, and you were able to draw a line to say, okay, this is what happened on my birthday at 5, and that's how I felt ever since then. Some people can make those direct connections. And for some, because there's so many different traumatic experiences throughout their life, it's hard to connect a
Mhm.
mood or behavior to that one particular event or whatever it may be. So sometimes it's about saying, okay, how am I going to address it? Because here's the
Mhm.
thing, you knew on your 39th birthday, you felt like that on your 40, 41st, 42nd. So
Yep.
even if you didn't go back and grab what it was, you know, okay, this is how I'm feeling. So you could have said, okay, how am I going to address it coming up on 43? Okay,
Mhm.
6 months out, I can start doing this, or a week before my birthday, I can do this. So sometimes we can get the what of it, and sometimes we just have to look at the how. But working with a therapist, either way, will help establish how to address it. And then there's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and
Mhm.
it talks. The premise of it is when we experience various traumas, and when I say traumas, we trauma is anything that disrupt your daily life. So
Yes.
trauma was last week when a lot of us didn't have
Yes.
resources, or went in the store and the shelves was bare. That was traumatic. Some of us, when we went in the store and the shelves was bare, it triggered Harvey.
Yes.
Some of us, when the ice started melting and the lights were out, and it triggered Harvey. So we could pinpoint that because it was a few years ago, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So sometimes we can do that very quickly, very easily. But with the book, The Body Keeps Score, it talks about how your body stores that trauma, even when
Mhm.
you can't consciously connect. So, like for you, whatever took place on your birthday at whatever year, your body had kept a
Lord,
hold of
that.
it. And
Wow.
each
Okay.
birthday, it relived it as if it was that birthday.
Hmm.
Because you
Wow.
don't, the things that we imagine and the things that we experience, sometimes our brain doesn't tell the difference. That's the reason that people who experience like PTSD from
Mhm.
military experiences, that they can hear some and they go back to where they first experienced it, because the body doesn't know the difference. Or like some of the actors, like I know Michael B. Jordan talked about
Yeah.
playing in Black Panther, and then the actor that just played in Judas and the Black Messiah.
Mhm.
He talked about how it was so real to him to poison the actor
Wow.
that it traumatized him. Like he had to seek therapy after that, even though that particular scene I think didn't make the movie. They filmed it so many times that he
Mm.
actually was experiencing emotions and feelings as if he were responsible for killing the Black Panther. And
Wow.
so understanding that sometimes we can know the what, but if we focus on the how, we can navigate from there. And even if consciously we can't remember, subconsciously our bodies will keep count of things that happen. So when you're feeling a certain type of way over and over again, just taking a moment and say, okay, did something happen around this time of year? Did grandma die? Did daddy have that heart attack? Did I have that car accident? Because we all have experienced a gamut of things. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just taking a moment to say, what did I experience in that time frame? Oh, sorry. I was trying to. Uh-oh. Okay. I was looking at the comments. I wanted to make sure, but I didn't miss a question,
Okay.
and accidentally unmuted it. So yeah, so sometimes we have to do that part of it, and it's good. Like you said, you had your spiritual mom. Sometimes it's the pastor you can go to. Sometimes it's a friend that you can go to. And if you don't have anyone that you feel like you can go and be vulnerable and transparent with, then seek therapy. Like, we're here. We out here in the streets, ready to hold space
Say
for
it
you.
again for the
Yeah,
people in the back.
Look,
It is okay to
it
go to
is
therapy.
okay. I have a shirt that says, I love my pastor and my therapist. And yes, as a therapist, I have a therapist. I would be not a great therapist if I did not have a therapist.
Yeah. Like I want that to be, because I feel like a lot of times we've just rushed over traumatic moments and tried to hurry up and get back to normalcy and never dealt with the trauma, and then we keep going, and then something like, I feel like that was 2020 and then this freeze happened. Like, did y'all not know we just walked out of a traumatic year and everybody wants to just rush back on Monday, like, oh, the sun is shining, everything's over. No, there are people who have been devastated. There are people who are still dealing with the repercussions of that storm. You know what I mean? And so, um, I think that therapy is a powerful tool. I go whenever I need to. My children have all been to therapy from as early as 5 years old up until last year. So therapy is a powerful tool, and it can be used. And, I know that sometime in religious sector is looked upon as, I don't know, wherever they feel it's unnecessary, you should just pray. But I know the Bible says faith without works is dead. So sometimes you need a therapist to help you do that work.
That's it.
Okay. To work through that stuff, as a, what does Ayala say, to unpack. And so,
To unpack some of it, we pack it off and ship it away because we don't need that anymore. So
yes.
yes, absolutely, therapy is amazing, and there are religious sectors that are embracing it more.
Mm,
Um, as a matter of fact, Monday on Am I Crazy? Our line sister LaQuinta will be on there, and
okay.
one of the
Nice.
things that she highlights and share is how the response that she received from her pastor helped
Mm,
to move her through her mental health journey, and that
yes.
was a great positive influence. But we know that religion has, and not spirituality, but religion has created barriers for a lot of us in our community, and church hurt is real.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why the millennials are less inclined to be in a church setting, because they feel like church messed my mom and them up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. They're a mess
it
right
didn't
now.
it didn't help.
Yeah.
It didn't help. It made some of the things worse. It inflamed them because it wasn't from a spiritual place. It was more from a structural religion place. And so
Mm,
I would say on that spiritual place and the influence, that to be sure that the leadership that you're under religiously is coming from the whole Bible,
yeah.
and helping you to understand that it's open to your interpretation and not interpreting it for you and then giving it to you and expecting it to fit in your life, because that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And that you're doing your own research and having your own relationship from you to God, and trusting your gut, trusting that intuition, because it's real in a spiritual place and it's
Yes.
real in a biological way, because the Lord made what we call the dorsal vagal nerve that encompasses all of our organs in our stomach area,
Oh
and
wow.
it goes from the top all the way down. So that's the reason why we'll feel
A good
different things
feeling.
in our
Mm,
stomach. It's
okay.
not by chance. Like, God is super dope. He was like, let me give you
Wow.
this and this and put it all together. So that
Wow.
spirituality, that mental health, that physical health, it all rolls together.
That's beautiful. And I'm telling you that, we got a few more minutes, but I really want to talk about that religious, because I had to move myself out of religion into a relationship. So I'm all about, I love millennial Christians, or whatever you want to call them, because they are so out of the box. Like they stretch your mind past four walls, and they embrace God in a whole nother level, a whole new way that some of us never did, because we grew up Baptist or Pentecostal or Lutheran or Catholic. And so, yeah, now it's all about a relationship. In 2020, more than ever, if you guys didn't realize that it was about a relationship because all the church doors shut and you still had to go on and find a way to reach your level of spirituality, wherever you're doing, like you had to do it on your own, which meant you had to create a relationship, what I'm saying, with God, or whatever you want to serve. But for me, it's God. And I think that's powerful because of influence, and because when we're reading the Word of God, it teaches us what kind of influence we should be under. And so I think a lot of what shapes our influence today should come from a spiritual perspective, because when we do that, then we learn how and what and when we need to, um, like you said, take out. Or I just see, I was watching Wonder Woman. This makes the most sense. In 1984, and everybody was like, at the end, the guy was like, everybody make your wish. Whatever you want, make your wish. And Wonder Woman was coming in and she threw that lasso of truth around his leg, and she started intercepting what he was saying and started telling people about how we've all had these life experiences, and you aren't the only one that's been hurt. You aren't the only one that's went without food and been crying. But guess what? That doesn't give you the choice to take from other people whatever you want because you feel you deserve it. And the powerful part, my kids laughed at me, but I started crying because people started going around and said, I relinquish my wish. Like I take it back. And to me, it just looked like people, you know, embracing the power of truth and of love, because I feel like only love is what transforms everything. The influence of love is more powerful than hate can ever be. And so I want to just end this talking about how love, and I believe in First John it says God is love. And so that is the most powerful influence you can ever live under. And not only being selfish and thinking, what about me? But understanding the truth is that love is better when it's given away. You know, it's better to give than to receive. And so, how do we use our lives, and we wrap ourselves up in love? And love can only come, I got to talk about it, y'all, through forgiveness. And so, sometimes the influences we are locked into or have strongholds is because of unforgiveness. And so, only the love of God can allow us to forgive and break free from some of those influences that we continue to have in our lives. And Sash, I just really want you to talk about that, and then just what do you want to leave with the people as we close out?
Well, Tiffany, I don't know how much I could add to that love, because you just brought it on home. And you're right. Just recognize that the forgiveness is for yourself,
Yes.
because we hold ourselves in bondage when we don't forgive others, and knowing that that's a process and that's a journey, and it's not something that's overnight, and it's not easy. Pastor Mike Todd did a
Yes.
forgiveness
Okay.
degree. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he called it FU University. I just love to say it, but FU, yeah. So Forgiveness
Yeah.
University, and so that's worth taking a look and listen at, because a lot of us don't know how to forgive. Because
Mm-hmm.
once again, in the church, in religion, it talks about, forgive others so that you can be forgiven. But
Yeah.
who taught us? Like, because if we look at how it looks in our families, it may look well and it may not look well. So it's it's going back and getting that knowledge for
Yeah.
yourself, and having a step-by-step process basically that you can follow, and be like, I can't go to step 2 until I finish step 1. And
Yeah.
so getting the good information from the right sources, and then
Yeah.
applying it. And as far as love, you have to have love of self before
Yes.
you can truly extend or give it away. If you don't love yourself well, then you're giving away unwell love.
Come on
And
now.
that just does not work. And one of the ways to love ourselves, and I'm gonna use this word, but I'm gonna define it real quick, is to care for ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
self-care, I know it's trending and everybody think, oh, I got my
Yes.
nails done, I got my hair done, I got a
Care of
haircut.
myself.
No, no, no. Self-care is any thought or
Mm-hmm.
behavior that contributes positively to your mental or physical health. Any
Mm-hmm.
thought. So it starts here. And the Bible talks about, taking our thoughts captive.
Captive. Yes.
And I believe it used the strong word captive for a reason, because some of our thoughts are so under the influence of what does not work that we just got to snatch them. Like when I think about
Yes.
captive, I'm thinking about I'm jacking it up. I'm
Yes.
in the throat. It's not like,
Lockdown. Yeah.
oh, this is a thought. No, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really snatching. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say start with your thoughts, take them captive, recognize where the influence is, what
Yes.
works for you, what does not. Be intentional about getting more of what works, and
Yeah.
removing yourself from what does not by setting boundaries. And then when you've done all that great, beautiful work, taking a moment to sit back and go, I did that. And what did I
All
do?
right.
And how well did I do it? We call that self reflection. But taking
Yes.
the time to reflect on what worked, what didn't, and then wash, rinse, repeat.
Yes. Okay. I love it. It's a process, and it's not overnight. It's something like you just said. You repeat it every day, and I think the thing about repetition becomes habit and it becomes normal. And I think a lot of people don't get to that place because they don't make it normal in their lives. They don't make therapy normal. They don't make forgiveness normal. They don't make there's so many things that we need to normalize about our lives that and things we have to unlearn. Okay, but I don't want to go over. It's been almost 50 minutes. I told you 45. So listen,
Look, it's
we're
good.
gonna,
Once we get going, we get going.
yeah,
It's Friday night. I don't have anywhere
it
to
is
go.
Friday. Okay,
We
well,
still in a pandemic. Where I'm going.
you're right. And most people are sitting home, and I'm telling you, um, you know, I read that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's like if you do something, I think it's 14 days, it becomes a habit. And so I feel like I challenge everybody who's listening to this and who's going to hear the replay, take 14 days to take some, what are those 3 things you told me about? Find self-awareness, be aware of what's happening to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get that self-awareness, be
Intentionality.
intentional,
Mm-hmm.
be intentional about it. Girl, I was taking notes. I wrote. And then listen, this is for me too. This is why, I feel like really God was like, okay, do this because when you talking, you're gonna hear it too. It's just it's a mirror, I'm here. I'm here for everything that
Absolutely.
you're giving. And then we're talking about that self-reflection, reflecting on that. And I think those are 3 powerful things you can do. You guys go follow LaShasta Bell. She is one of the powerhouses out here sharing real truth about mental health and just I love that she's just so down to earth. It's nothing that you feel like she's snooty and got her nose up. Well, this is this. No, I'm
Nah,
telling you, she just comes with
not
the
at all.
truth, and she's real. Everyday Black woman telling y'all, look, this is what we got to do to be better. So I appreciate everything that you share with us. I think y'all got a free therapy session tonight. So if y'all the
Well, look,
do
it
is go
wasn't
ahead and
therapy, but I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah, yeah.
you bringing me
It's
on.
nothing.
And yes, definitely follow. If you go to the website, lashastabell.com, there's a 3-day guided journal that you can purchase that will help walk you through the
Yes,
self reflection, the intentionality, and the self awareness. Also, for all my ladies, March 1st, we're going to run a special on our Prioritizing Me retreat. So we are doing a retreat in Navasota, Texas. So not too far away from home. We'll have all our COVID measures in place, but for women to learn or relearn how to prioritize themselves so that the good work can go forth, so that we can continue to show up for others and be well in doing so, so that we don't spread the unwellness. We spread the wellness.
mm,
So yeah, I
yes,
appreciate this. I enjoyed it, Tiff. Anytime we can chop it up. You're so insightful and have lived in so many spaces to bring so many different perspectives that it's just good to. It's like having a regular conversation. So
yeah, I love it.
I appreciate. I think we had this same conversation offline, right? It's like
Yep, yep. It's the same. I tell people all the time, I'm the same everywhere. So you catch
that's
me
it.
here, I'm gonna be the same person. So I
And life
love it.
is so easy when you are, right?
Oh my, that girl, you didn't started a whole other podcast. Come on now, being you is so easy.
Look,
Anyway,
that's the title. It's so easy to be you everywhere. Okay,
it's
we'll wrap it
easy.
back around later. So
Mhm.
thank you. I
Oh,
do
take
appreciate you
notes.
having me on.
Thank you so much. Hey guys, thank y'all for tuning in. You have just heard our special guest tonight, LaShasta Bell. Go follow her. If you can be there on March 1st, do that. And you've been listening to Your Life Relations Ambassador. This is Tiffany Carr, and I'm signing off.